Destiny Dawn Harris is a wife and mother to three grown children. She lives in Mobile, Alabama, and graduated from the University of South Alabama with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. Alongside her husband, Brent, Destiny owns and runs an automotive detailing business they founded in 1999. From 8,000 Miles is Destiny's first book, detailing the traumatic events that unfolded in her family's life mid-September 2018. Destiny writes with honesty and vulnerability about all that transpired, with the purpose of bringing strength, healing, and hope to others who are facing difficult circumstances. Destiny's faith in Jesus Christ is the reason she made it through this trauma, and she sees everything she writes as a testimony to what she has become and all that God has done for her. Destiny, it is great to see you, and thank you for coming on Triumph Talks. I'm really excited to talk about your book today.
Hi, Melanie. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I always like to come on and talk with you.
We just recently published your book, and it made it to #1 as a new release and #1 bestseller. So definitely was a very well anticipated book. Let me ask the first question, which is what inspired you to write this book?
Well, in 2018, my daughter got on a plane in the middle of the night. She left our home. She was 21, always lived at home, headed to India to meet a man she had been talking to online for 2 years without our knowledge. His father had paid for a one-way ticket for her to come to his country. And she had a boyfriend here, so for 2 years. So we had no idea that she was talking to anyone else. Um, so what made me want to write about it was to let people know our story, to let them know that this happened to us and that it does happen, and to bring awareness to others about it.
I guess that's where the title comes from 8,000 miles, just to give an idea
Yes.
of the
Yes.
distance between your home, and you didn't even know about it until she was already gone,
Yes.
or, she'd already
Yes.
taken off.
She was already gone
Wow.
before we knew
Yeah, that's
anything.
definitely a trauma that I'm sure all parents hope never happens to them,
Right.
but with the internet and the easy access that predators have, it's actually becoming more common than we'd like to think. I think
Right.
that's a great segue into the next question then, and that is, what do you hope people will take from reading your book?
Well, I hope that people understand that this is happening, that bring awareness to it, that they can prevent it so that they can prevent it from happening to their loved ones, and also to help bring healing to anybody who something like this may have happened to.
Well, you've done a really beautiful job of taking people on the journey with you. I've got some excerpts here that I'd like to read that I think give the viewers a little bit of a flavor or a sampling of the type of storytelling they're going to read, as well as the wisdom that you have to share. So
Okay.
maybe I'll dive in and do that.
Okay.
Um, so the first excerpt comes from the beginning. And I think it helps also answer this question. It really addresses the question. It says, I had to tell this story to help save girls and those who may get caught in a similar trap. Predators are real, and human trafficking, marriage fraud, and other crimes are very much happening in our world, even in our own hometowns. I wrote this book to bring awareness by telling our story in the hopes that it prevents this from happening to someone else. I encourage parents to get inside their children's heads to know them and what they're thinking. We can't eliminate evils, but we can be aware of and prevent them. Education, not condemnation. Predators have always been around, but now with the invention of the internet, our loved ones are accessible from anywhere in the world at any time. Deception abounds, and the first part of our story involves the dangers of the internet.
Yes.
I like that phrase, education, not condemnation, that you wrote there.
Yes.
Would you like to explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yes, instead of condemning people for their mistakes or things that they've done or things they might do or might be inclined to do, it's really just about educating them, young girls to know, hey, we're not trying to, scold you. We're trying to educate you and let you know what can happen. We're trying to protect you. So we're not here to condemn you. We're here to educate you and help you be more aware so that you can make better choices for your life. Because I hear of so many girls who, they want to just get away from home. Maybe home is, not where they want to be, or they don't want to be under their parents' rule or rules, and they want to be free from that. And they think that there's a better way, there's a better place out there. But the minute they get out there, they find themselves being sold for sex. And that is a horrible nightmare that I'm sure no girl wants to end up. If she had known that's what, if those girls had known that that's where they were headed, I don't think they would have ever left home. I think they would try to have a conversation with their parents, or try to talk to someone, some adult or someone, about how they're feeling, and try to figure out another way than running into the arms of some stranger online that they don't know.
Yeah, I think that is really key because there's a lot of very well planned tactics that are used by the predators, and
Yes.
they know how to brainwash people.
Yes, this is
So,
a business.
yeah,
This is a
and
business, and they're
and
skilled.
they what you talk in here in this excerpt about get into the heads of your children, and I'm sure people might be like, "How?" But here's the truth. The reality is the predators are
Yes.
literally getting into the heads of,
Yes.
and that is the
Yes.
reason why your daughter, who you talk a lot about her, she was kind of introverted, spent a lot of time at home in her room. You had no idea she would do something like that because it was just completely out of character. And I
Right.
think that's evidence of the brainwashing that happens. So when you talk about education, not condemnation, we really can't condemn them for making those choices
Mm-mm.
because what happened is they actually were accessed by master manipulators.
Yes. And that's what
Yeah.
I would like for people like my daughter and other girls who this has happened to, is don't be ashamed of it, because this is a business. They are masters of deception and manipulation. This is what they do. This is not just some guy you just happen to meet online. This is a business. They've been taught by people much smarter than them, and they're just the person to make to make it happen. So anybody could be, if we get in a place where we are in a position of vulnerability. That's why I say educate, because anytime, it doesn't matter how old you are, a 60 something 70-year-old woman can be very vulnerable if she's in
Yeah.
that state. So it's not just
Mhm.
young girls, it's anybody. Men can be vulnerable. We just can't let ourselves get there, and we need to know, we need to recognize the tactics that they use so that we can recognize when it's happening to us. Because when you're being deceived, you don't know you're being deceived. So you need to know what those red flags, those warning flags are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that again is why this your book is so critical because you are able to help people learn the red flags and even recognize themselves potentially just through the process of the storytelling. And it's very entertaining. I'm not sure if that's the right word, probably. And by that I mean it's captivating and suspenseful. And so you just it's a pretty thick book.
Yeah.
It's a pretty thick book,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it's a quick read in that it's amazing the different things that happen, and you just find yourself turning the page. And I think that makes your book extremely important above a more academic book on the topic, because people are able to stick with it, and, storytelling is the best way to teach something.
Right.
So
Yep.
your education, that you provide is extremely important. Again, education, not condemnation. So you've
Right.
definitely accomplished that goal, that
Yeah.
purpose in writing your book.
Yes.
All right.
Stories definitely do that. Stories
Yeah.
definitely teach lessons.
Yes, they do. And if nothing else, that all that you went through can be for a great purpose, and that you now have a story to tell. And
Yeah, I was walking down a road, and I was walking past the cafe, and I saw words in a light, it was lit up words inside the cafe, just strolling by, and it said, the worst mistakes make the greatest stories.
yeah,
So it's true. But
yeah.
hopefully we can learn from it. That's the good part.
Well, people will learn from your story if they read it.
Yeah, right.
And that's why it's so important that we get the word out about your book. and
Yeah,
I'm really glad to be working with you on having published your book. And I think that this is a good time to put a little plug in also for your YouTube channel that you're starting, because no, we can talk about this more because it really is the continuation of what you began. But I guess I just want to point out at this point that you really are committed to the education of others and using your story in the biggest way possible. And I
yes,
think that's really, after something so difficult, it might be really easy to just want to move on with your life. And
absolutely.
yeah, and it's
Absolutely,
been
kinda
so
put
hard.
it out of your head, like, "I
Yeah.
don't wanna be this person anymore, I wanna go on with my real life," but
But
this is
instead, you're choosing to stay in that
yeah,
experience in a lot of ways by talking about it and
yeah,
repeating it for others to learn from. And so I know
yeah,
that's not easy. And of course,
yeah,
writing a book with as much detail as you have here is not easy, but it's
right,
also therapeutic, and we'll talk about that.
yeah,
So, the next excerpt I want to read is this is just to kind of set it up. This is the moment when you discovered that your daughter wasn't at home and you didn't know where she was. And so you drove to her job thinking that's where she was. And so I'm just going to read that little bit, and then I'd love you to talk about this moment and, what you learned from this part of your experience. So it
okay,
says, once inside, I walked up to the desk where a young girl stood smiling. So you walked up to the business, which was a fitness center that your daughter
right,
worked at, just so the
right.
readers are up to speed. All right. She was about my daughter's age with long, curly blonde hair. Before she could speak, I nervously asked, "May I see Victoria, please?" I looked beyond her to the purple and yellow machines where she would have been training someone. "Oh, Victoria doesn't work here anymore," the girl responded with a smile. My face started to drop into what I suspected was a look of dread and confusion. "What?" I asked, hardly able to speak. She probably thought I was a client, so I proceeded to clarify. "What do you mean she doesn't work here anymore? I'm her mother." The girl began to look worried and said in a softer voice, "Yes, she went to India to see a friend. She gave a 6-week notice and has been training her replacement for the past 2 months."
It was just a unbelievable moment of just shock and horror at the same time, like a nightmare. You just feel like a nightmare comes over you and like, "This can't be real, this can't be happening."
India?
Um,
Like, what? Where?
yeah,
What? When? She
yeah,
planned this? Didn't tell
yeah,
me? Because you
right.
didn't have a bad relationship with your daughter.
No, it wasn't super close
Mhm,
because she did keep to herself a lot, but she did
mhm.
the biggest thing is she never really told us what was on her mind or what she was thinking. That's why I say get inside your children's head, and how to do that is it takes time of just sitting in their room and talking to them for an hour, like, every now and then. I mean, I would have needed to do that, like, on a daily basis with my daughter to know what was going on till she got comfortable with speaking about what her thoughts and feelings. So, yeah, that's, um that's,
Yeah. I'm glad you
what
mentioned that, because I was gonna ask that question. It's like, how do you get into their minds? But it makes sense. And I think part of the problem is that there's a twofold problem here. One is the internet
yeah,
and the addictiveness of it. We're
yeah,
all addicted. I
yes.
think you'd have to just not have any technology in your life to not have some kind of,
Right.
compulsion
Yeah,
to go and check your email, check your social media. And so our kids' minds and attention is so tied up in this, and we're competing with that on one
right.
hand. And
Yeah,
then on the other hand, our attention is so tied up, whether it be in our own internet worlds or just
mhm,
our busy lives. We are so busy. And I think if we all stop and are really honest about life and about our family situations, I think every one of us could probably say we could do so much better at connecting.
right. Yeah, it used to be television, and now
Yeah.
it's this, and this is way more compelling because
Yeah.
it's interactive, you can interact, so it's really enticing, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
yeah,
Television doesn't really interact too much. Although, I know the other thing about this, social media is that it's by design to be addictive, like a slot machine.
yeah,
People just have to keep putting the quarters in and pulling the slot machine to see what they're gonna get, and that's
Right.
what we do. I mean, they're all that way. YouTube, Facebook, you keep hitting homepage or popping it down to see what the new posts are gonna be, and it's
Right.
very much designed with that in mind, and so
Yeah, because we wanna connect with people, and that's
yeah.
good, but, we're not doing it very much in real life, that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Well, and if we look back on the time we spend on it, it's probably maybe 25% of it was really valuable, and there's a whole lot of just time waste, so
Right.
it
Right.
really is important to be intentional, though, and recognize that it's designed to attract us. I think you have to understand what the issue is in order to fix the issue. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna read the next excerpt. Now, you initially found out just by going to her work and very unexpectedly learning that your daughter had left. But now you went home and discovered that she actually had left you a letter. So
Thank goodness.
yeah, yeah. So now it says, with the letter in my hand, I sat bewildered. India, I thought. She's as good as dead. I'll never see her again. I cannot begin to describe the way I felt at that moment. Unless you're a parent who has walked in those shoes, you cannot understand or imagine it. I felt so helpless. She was not dead. She was alive. But for how long? And how would I even know? There was no way I could possibly catch up to her. Nobody could. Even if I got on a plane right at that moment, I couldn't reach her before she landed. I was hopeless. I had heard how horrible a place it is. We had just seen a movie about it that she suggested we watch about the sex trafficking that goes on there.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about being brainwashed.
Yeah.
If you had just watched a film about that going on in the very place she was headed to, and she couldn't recognize that that might be what's about to happen to her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she was so made to believe that she had to leave. Like her parents were bad, mistreating her. She
Mhm.
didn't need to be at home. She had to leave. He needed to make her hate us and hate where she was, and she was very confused. And yeah, a friend of mine, that was 2 weeks before she left, and a friend of mine said, "I'm sure she had to put up a wall to be able
Mhm.
to do what she did," because, I had told her right after the movie was over, I got up, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that's my worst fear of my child not being gone and me not knowing where they are, if they're okay," and she didn't say a word.
Not only was your worst fear coming true, it was happening by choice on her end,
Yes.
which there's a little touch of pain, not a little touch, but there's an additional pain that
Mhm.
comes from realizing that she made that choice to
Right.
hurt you. Of course, she probably was so manipulated that she wasn't thinking at all about you or your feelings, obviously, but
Right.
it's still hard to know that your loved one would just not talk to you about something so big in their life.
I do think that
Mhm.
she did care about it, it's just that she didn't know ho she was afraid that I would stop her, and she didn't know how to talk to
Mhm.
me about it, and she was just, thought she actually thought she was alright. She thought it was gonna be okay. Very,
Yeah.
very manipulated and naive, yeah.
Predators definitely prey on the naivety of people, and
Yes.
that's the other thing that your book really can help with is to reduce that amount of just, uh and I think it's especially true, in our country on a certain level, hopefully it's changing, which is um, this feeling like there just isn't as much evil in the world as there really is.
Yeah.
I think we've been protected from a lot of war and terrorism right on our own land. We've
Yeah.
definitely been participated outside of it, but I think people are very unaware of just how bad the world can be outside of the safety and protection that we've been so blessed with,
Yes.
so to this
Well,
point.
my daughter definitely was, she was protected and sheltered from that, not on purpose exactly, but we knew that the television wasn't good and we didn't have it for a long time, was
Mhm.
just nothing good on there, but, there's a a saying or, about being innocent um, to evil, but not being innocent of evil or something like that. In other words, being innocent towards it to where you're not seeing all the bad, but you're not totally, oblivious to what is happening. There's a way to teach your children about the evil that's going on, but not having them just see it, in a
Yeah.
bad way.
Yeah, and to your point about educating, that I think that's part of the education is to both get into their mind, to be in their lives, to not let the busyness of life and the distraction of the
Absolutely.
technology, but also to educate and say, this is how evil the world is, and people are doing these things. And while I say that, I realized you had just watched a movie about it, so it would seem like you might have checked that box,
But we
and
didn't have the talk. We didn't
it
have the
still
talk.
wasn't enough. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we didn't have the talk, and, I didn't think that was necessary, and she was the one that suggested to watch it,
yeah.
so,
You needed to add that conversation.
yes, you have to have conversation, and I
Yeah.
think that our children, really is taking their innocence away because we're having to have these talks with little children about sexual things and things
Oh,
like that, and it's taking it, but if we don't at least do that step, as bad as that feels to do, it's gonna be a lot worse whenever someone,
mhm.
takes them from us.
I think that's a really good point. I think they're uncomfortable. We shouldn't have to talk to kids about
No,
some
I
of the things that need
know.
to be talked about, and
Yeah,
so
but we
we're
have
not
to. We're
doing it.
forced. We're forced to
Yeah.
now.
So I'm going to pick up and read another excerpt, and this is a little farther into the story. Now that you know she's gone, you're trying to figure out what to do about it. Said, we had a pastor from India visit the previous year, and a lady from the lifestyle center where Preston was studying had lived in India for years. Preston being one of your sons.
Yes.
I heard things from both of them about what life was like there. People use the bathroom in the streets. There's urine and feces all over the sidewalk. We don't have toilet paper. People use their hands, Pastor Amos had said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could this be possible? This was a person who was born and currently lives there. He had to be telling the truth, but I still had a hard time comprehending it. Pastor Amos said that they didn't have a sewer system, therefore, paper products of any kind were not allowed. But I still couldn't imagine the hand wiping part. Knowing how Victoria took 2 long hot showers a day, basked in the sunshine, taking in the fresh air several times a week, spent hours in the bathroom primping, rested hours in bed, and mostly ate fresh fruits and vegetables that she made into food art before eating. If this place was as these people said it was, with no toilet paper, India and Victoria were not going to get along. This was not a place she would enjoy. So,
Right. Yeah, that was not an environment she was gonna be happy in. I
yeah.
don't think she realized what she was getting herself into, and that's just one part, that's just one layer of
Yeah.
uh,
So I'll point out that you did change the names. Most of the names in the book are changed, which is for, I think everybody understands the need to kind of protect people's identities. You don't need to give the real names for the story to be effective. And
right.
so Ranjit was the
Mhm.
name that you used to represent the young man that had enticed your daughter away.
Right.
So this is a little part we talk about him. It was beginning to look like Ranjit was a kid with no education, had no work ethic, and who was not making anything of himself. It was possible that someone powerful in a high political position with money or a middleman had approached him with the enticement. Making a lot of money, and all he had to do was follow the script, their instructions, and they could make him and his family wealthy. His parents would probably jump at the idea, seeing that they didn't have a son who would be able to care for them in their old age, but who would be a burden to them. So, one way or another, whether it was getting an American girl enticed into coming over, selling her on the black market, and receiving a one time windfall, or if it was by getting their son married to her as a chance at citizenship in America, either would work.
Yes. Yeah, we weren't sure exactly what his intentions were, and we may never know. but, at the very least, it was to get into America, but there's reasons why I don't think that that's what it was. I think that was just plan B since we thwarted plan A, and,
Yeah.
yeah, people do this for extortion also. I mean, just getting money, just having her send him money, us ruining their reputation, not being able to keep a job anymore, and all these things that they tell her, so, yeah,
Yeah.
we're not sure.
So share a little bit, if you'll just summarize some of the things you were able to do to thwart what they had planned, and this is very much what your story encompasses, is all the steps that you had to go through.
Right. So we had Homeland Security and the US Marshals surround them in the airport in New Delhi. So they were questioning them, making a big scene, making them feel, or at least making my daughter feel uncomfortable that, this is a big deal. This is real. They wouldn't be doing this. They didn't think that there was something that could really happen or something really suspicious. They weren't doing this because I told them to, which is what she was made to believe, that this was all me. And these people really had a real reason to be there. They wouldn't be there. And they were surrounding her and questioning them. And at one point, uh, the the boy, the young man, and his sister were wanting, or at least the sister was wanting to leave, saying it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And so it does sound like there was a plan there. And so yeah, we may never know their true intentions unless someone comes forward and that does know, or he ever comes forward and says the truth, tells the truth. But no one will ever know what was in his mind that day, or his sister may know. But so
Yeah, I agree, her saying it's not worth it does kinda make it seem like, well, you know, it's
what's not worth it?
yeah, and without giving away your whole book, there's a lot of details about the process of just getting a passport and a ticket at the very last minute, and all of the different powers that be that needed to be involved. You talk about the Homeland Security, and really you did have all eyes on her from our country and that country. So
Yes.
there really wasn't a way to sell her on the black market
Not
without.
at that point, I don't think.
Yeah, I think you did thwart what that probably was, and then you do mention in the beginning that, marriage fraud actually was something that came, and so you were able to bring her home, but there's a whole lot more that happens and a lot more people, getting involved that didn't help you at all, and there's just a lot to learn, I'll just say that. But there's one, excerpt here I wanna read now. This is something you wrote regarding a time when you were actually in India. They're striving to get her and bring her home, and, I think this is really an important message. It says, "I opened my Bible to find comfort. God, please show me, tell me something," I prayed. I opened to Psalms, and my eyes immediately dropped down to a verse. "You have been astonished, but I will deliver your beloved." Psalm 63 to 5. I almost lost my breath as I began to shake and cry, "Oh God, thank you for giving this to me. You are going to save her out of this place." I couldn't believe how fast he answered that prayer and gave me a sure promise. I was so glad I had opened my Bible. Gosh.
Yes. It was so soon, as soon as we just got there in our hotel, he told me when I first got there, because he knew what I was gonna have to go through, and it was gonna look like it wasn't happening, and he gave me that promise as soon as I
Mm,
got there, and he did. He did deliver on his promise,
yeah.
and I just have to keep believing he's gonna finish delivering on his promises. I don't know how long it's gonna take.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because you definitely had a lot of miracles and interventions, and what I love about that particular scripture is that it couldn't be more fitting if God were to sit and say
Yeah,
something to you to fit
yeah,
exactly which is what he did through the scriptures. But
right.
it's just amazing that something written so long ago was
Mhm.
there for you. You were
Yes.
astonished. I mean, that's a good word for how you're feeling about it all. And
Yeah.
your beloved, I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
I just wanted to be able to talk a little bit about the intervention of God, and you write a very, very powerful conclusion. And I'm not going to read it because I really think it's something people need to
Yeah.
read your story for that
Yeah.
conclusion to be as
Yeah.
meaningful as it is.
Right.
But it's kind
Yeah.
of along the lines of this. And as we live in this evil world, it's so important to know that the evil only exists because it is the opposite of the light and the truth and the love
Mhm.
that is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're still struggling. She did come back. You saved her, but then she returned, and there's a whole lot. Again, I just want the viewers to be intrigued to find out what happened and where you are today. So I'm going to just kind of um, go to the next question so that we can talk a little bit
Okay.
more about the cover and the title and kind of talk about that process that you went through. Um, how did you come up with the title? And there's a really profound subtitle as well that
Yeah.
I know you worked on very carefully, and of course the cover.
Yes. So from 8,000 miles, I came up with that when I was sitting at my desk one day and I started to write the book. And I was just thinking, wow, she was taken from me. And he didn't come into this house. He didn't come in through the door or the window. Heck, he didn't even come into this country. He came in through her phone. From 8,000 miles away, my daughter was able to be taken from me. So that's how I came up with the titles. From 8,000 miles, he took her. And then the tagline is a true story of internet danger and how our daughter was saved. Just to get that really quick notion to people that there's danger in the internet, because my first tagline was a true story of internet captivation, because she
Yeah.
was captivated in not only by love but also kidnapped, basically taken from me that way. But I didn't think that would come across too quickly. I wanted it to be quick, it's danger. And then how our daughter was saved, because a lot of people came to our rescue to help us. It was just amazing how many people so quickly that God brought to our aid to help us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also speaks to why it was such a successful release of your book, because all those people that had followed you. Now, your book was released at a very special time of year. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we started the marketing for it on the 6 year anniversary of the day she left on
Mm.
September 17th. And then we released it on Amazon to order on October 1st, which was the 6 year anniversary of the day that we brought her back from India.
Yeah, I
So that
love
was very special.
it. Is significant. I think that it happened
Mhm.
that way. So tell me about the cover art. Let me bring that.
Yeah, so all the only thing I could think, I mean, the first thing that I thought of is it has to be an airplane. That just made sense to me, just to see that belly of that airplane leaving that morning early. She left about 6 a.m., so it's probably just getting,
Yeah.
daylight, especially in September. It's probably just getting daylight. So, yeah, that was the absolute thing that I knew had to be on the front cover, because that's all I could think about is that airplane leaving at dawn. So,
It's a striking cover. I think it definitely visually conveys all the emotion that might surround someone whose loved one has just taken off and into the darkness of, out into the unknown. And you also had a really great person write a foreword for your book. I'd love you to talk a little bit about that.
yes, so John Baldwin, his daughter Mackenzie, she almost did what my daughter did. She had been talking to a guy online for about a year, but the difference in our story and his story is that, well, or his story and our story is that he was able to find out before his daughter left that she was going to leave. And I can't imagine that, because I probably would have totally messed that up if I'd have found out. But him and his wife were able to keep quiet about it, and um, finally, got to was able to keep her from leaving. And so and she was, she had a lot of issues with that. Never having left and only talked to him for a year, she had issues where she had been traumatized. She had to work through a lot of things. Maybe she still is, but my daughter's been talking to this guy for 8 years now, and she went there 3 times. So,
Wow.
I don't want to give that away, but I mean, she did end up going back. So, um, I can't imagine what it's going to take to bring her back to us, in her heart and mind, even though she's here physically. But I'm just glad she's safe and in the U.S. But it's going to take
Yeah.
another miracle to bring her back emotionally because her heart is far from us. I will be partnering with Hands of Justice Human Trafficking Agency, and 10% of the proceeds of the sale of the book will go to Hands of Justice to help prevent and to help heal the victims of human trafficking. Hands of Justice is founded by a survivor, and many of the people who are support leaders and team leaders and who work there and volunteer there are also overcomers, as they say, and are survivors. They not only help to prevent human trafficking, but they also help heal the people who have been through it, not only for men and women, but also for families. And so please go to their website, handsofjustice.org, and find out more about the services that they provide.
Yeah, you're still going through that trauma, hasn't stopped yet, but this is definitely, I think, a way to keep the healing process, and I know that I hope that your daughter will watch this,
Yes.
and that she will know that you've told her story out of love for her
Yes.
and love for all those who may be struggling with this
Right.
kind of hardship,
Right.
and that you want a relationship with her.
Yes.
Yeah, because I
Yes.
know
Please come home.
I'm sure at
Please
first she
come
might
back.
think that this is a book that's a tell-all that will make her look bad, but kind of going back to that education, not condemnation, I mean,
Right.
that's
That's all it
really
is.
you're not condemning her,
No,
we're saying we understand, but,
I do. Yeah.
let's I hope that this book will help restore,
Yes.
to be able to read it and see your side of the experience too, because I'm sure she doesn't understand the pain that was caused, and that's
No.
not to make her feel bad for causing pain,
No.
but it reveals the hardship and the lengths that you went to save her, and you did save her, whether she realizes it or not. She very
Right.
likely was headed into a horrible
Oh, yeah.
life and probably an
Mm.
early death. So
Yeah.
you did save her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the Baldwins, I know that you write about them a little bit in your book, and it was actually they had just released their book about the time that you were coming back from India, and they
Yeah.
were talking about, oh, can't imagine what it would have been like if she'd left, and you are thinking to yourself, I can answer that question.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The very week that we came back, I saw their story, and they were
Mhm.
talking about it or speaking about it, and I saw it online, and I was like, "Wow." They kept saying, "We can't imagine what would have happened," and I'm like, yeah, and, we did, we just experienced that, and, hopefully
Mhm.
so that I would hope no one else would have to if they would listen, but people don't usually listen sometimes, but, it's probably going to happen to someone, and I hate that, but, hopefully we can reach some people or they won't do that, but, where their story left off is where our story began. So
Yeah,
their
right.
book is called Almost Gone, the
Mm.
title of their book, and the first chapter of my book is called Gone. So it
Yeah.
already happened at the very beginning.
Wow, that's neat. I hadn't made that connection before until just now. I actually worked with the Baldwins, and I worked closely with their daughter Mackenzie in writing her part. And So it was actually through my knowledge of them that I was able to reach out and invite them to, or invite John, the father, to write the forward for your book, and he did a
Yeah.
really great job.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I have some fun pictures of you when your book first arrived, and I wonder if you'll just talk about this moment, what it felt like. Let me bring that up.
Yeah, so this is opening or the unboxing of my shipment from Amazon of the book. So the first book, my first book, for the first time seeing it, and it was just a really neat experience to hold it in my hand and to see it in print, after so many, you know, years, a couple of years of working on it. And it was interesting. Recently, I went back to that little place, my little camper in the woods where I wrote it, and to have it there with me was really, really cool. It was really just indescribable, that it was there and it had been born now. It wasn't just on a computer screen.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a very good analogy to compare this to just having your baby be born and
Yes.
holding it for the first time.
Yes.
It's just amazing feeling.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
did your baby have all its fingers and toes?
I think so. Yes.
Well, I think that's a good segue into my last question, and because you are now a successful author, at least you had a great start, and you've got a lot coming ahead. And what advice do you have for aspiring authors? Because I know there's a lot of people who really have been through hard things and their own and could help others and are probably thinking about it, but don't know where to begin. What advice would you have for somebody who wants to do something similar to what you've accomplished?
Well, first of all, I would just encourage you to start journaling every day, just for an hour every morning, real early, whenever it's quiet and you can't be interrupted and you can think your own thoughts. Just start writing in a notebook, just journal and get all those emotions and thoughts out on the page, whatever they are. And it's very healing to do that, and it'll help you practice your writing. And I encourage anyone to do that. And don't be afraid. That's the second thing. If you do decide to share it, don't be afraid to do that. When we make ourselves vulnerable, yes, it can be scary, but at the same time, we help other people and we help them open up and feel free, the freedom to be vulnerable themselves. And that's healing for them. So I would encourage you to not hold back. There's been a lot of times where I wanted to hold back. I'm like, I'm not sure if I should say this or say it that way. And you just have to be open and honest. I think that's the best thing to do. Um, of course, keeping discernment and everything to make it, come across the right way. But just when you're in there journaling, just let it flow freely.
That's great advice. And I do think that being open to sharing your most painful moments, there's something validating about that. It's almost like it's okay to be human.
Yes.
Um, these are the feelings that you're going to have in these kinds of situations, and I think it makes your story that much more compelling. So it's your story really does take people deep into all of your emotions, both the dark ones and the miracles, and to see that they all come together in creating a triumph story. And of course, you can't have triumph without tragedy. And
Right.
so your experience and what you're doing today is very triumphant. And so I want to just take a minute now to let you talk a little bit about where you are today, both with your book and your mission and where you're headed and some of the things that you're working on so that people can join you or follow you.
Well, I am working on the YouTube channel, which will be once a week. I'll have a show there and have guests on the show from time to time, and that'll be Tuesdays at 10:30. I'll put out Central Time. I'll put out a new one each week. But I'm also doing some legwork, going around to churches and letting them know about my story, and giving the women's ministry leader or the pastor the copy of the book so they can read it. And then if they want me to come and speak about it, I'll do that and help bring awareness to parents that this is happening.
Yeah, that's powerful. I know when the Baldwin's book first came out, they did a lot of speaking,
Yeah.
and they told me they would have young women come up to them and crying and saying, "Oh my gosh, that's me. That's what I'm going through." And they didn't have any idea what was happening to them until they heard Mackenzie talk about it and her dad talk about it. And so I know that you're going to save lives in what you're doing. And so, what's your YouTube channel called so people can look you up?
It's Destiny Dawn.
Okay. You also have a website, which is a place where they can learn more about you, where you are speaking, or connect to your YouTube channel. And what is that?
That's destinydawnofficial.com.
Great. I'm really, it's going to be neat watching your progress. And really, this was a big job, but it's only the beginning. Getting
Yes.
a book published and getting it
Right.
out there is the next step. Now, this is birthing a baby. We've talked about this, and now we're going to raise it, right? We're going to
Right.
these books
Right.
are our babies, but we got to raise them to adulthood, and that's
Right.
all of the things we do after it's published. And so,
Right.
yeah, I know that
Yeah.
your book is going to make a big difference in your story, and praying that your daughter will come across it and read it, or listen to all of that you're doing in the
Yes.
spirit of, ideally gratitude, because it's all for her. It's all
Yeah.
to allow what she went through to make a difference. And in the case of the Baldwins, Mackenzie and her dad actually co-authored their book. So, um, Victoria, that's your name in the book. Not your real name, but Victoria, if you're watching this, we hope that you will see the opportunity that you have to talk about your life and share from your perspective what happened. And we would
Yes.
love that to happen. And
Yes.
just know that you're loved and that you are not judged, but just come back and bring all that love that belongs in a family with you. So,
Yes. Come home. Come back.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank
You
you.
and I actually recorded a couple episodes for your show, so if people want to go and learn about the publishing process in more detail, it was one of our episodes, and
Yes.
just one to introduce your book. And so I will have some end cards in this video, and I'll link to your channel as well, so that people can jump right over after watching the show once it's all been uploaded.
Thank you, Melania. It was a pleasure to be on your show today and talk about the book. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.